Welcome back, guys. My name is Brandon, and today I'm going to show you how to build the ultimate press brake attachment. Stick around. I recently built these steps, which are going to go on our $750 Marketplace tandem axle trailer rebuild project. These are going to go in front and behind of the fenders, and we're going to cut a hole in them and put a clearance light. I built them using this press brake attachment. The maximum width of this is 12 inches, so that's the maximum width I can make this. I need them to be a little bit wider. So we're going to build our own press brake attachment today. Let me show you a quick clip of me building these and trying them out on the trailer. I've got some 1/8" diamond plate, cut it down to 12 inches. I'm really excited to show you this. There are plenty of press brake builds online, but none quite like this. In the next few minutes, I'm going to show you a totally unique way to create part of a press brake using a surprisingly simple hand tool. Something that's never been done before. Trust me, you won't believe how easy this is. These will work okay, but I want something a little bit bigger, a little bit wider, because all we can bend with this is 12 inches. We're limited by the width of the die. So I'm just going to build one of these. Pretty simple, pretty straightforward. Got a couple dowels, got a punch, a receptacle on top that cradles around this, and then a plate, and then a little V-block at the bottom. In between this press is 22.5 inches. So I've got a piece of flat plate that's 1/2 inch by 6 inches. I'm going to cut this to 22. This is going to be my top punch, and this is a piece of 3/4 thick by 4-inch flat bar. So that'll be this. The one labor intensive part is going to be putting this little bevel on the end. And then to make the V for the bottom, I've got some 1.5" by 1/4 angle. We're going to do that. That'll be what we press into. And then for these pieces here, we're just going to use the same materials that we use on the trailer for the hinges when we built the ramp gate. So the first order of business is we're going to cut this to 22 inches. And you don't necessarily need this type of saw to make this cut. You could actually cut this using the same saw that you just saw me cutting that plate with for about 120 bucks. So for this one, they came in about 1.25 inches off the end of the plate and started their die. But I don't really care how close this shaft is to the end, so I'm going to go 1.5 inches. Go 1/4 inch more, and that's where we'll start our die. So that should give us a bending capacity of about 18.5 inches. So that means we can cut our 1.5" by 1/4 angle to 18.5. Now I can't weld down inside here, but this die, this is called the die, this part of it, will be welded all down in here. But if I weld in here, what's going to happen is that's going to take up space, and it's going to make it so I can't bend it evenly. I do want to leave a little bit of a gap in between them, because if you look at this die here, you can see there's a little bit of a gap down in the middle. So I'm going to copy basically this design right here. But because I do want to get some weld in here, what I'm going to do is set this up on some scraps, then tack these straps to this angle. Then I can flip it over, and on the back side of this, I can weld along this seam. I don't know if it matters, but I think it's going to be a little bit stronger if I do it that way. I got a couple pieces of aluminum that's 1/16 of an inch thick, and I'm just going to set it right in the area of my strap. Now you can see how that's leaving a little bit of a gap that I'll be able to weld on the back side. And so I don't warp this, I'm going to jump around a little bit. I'll do a little here, do a little over here, do a little in the middle. And I probably won't do it the whole way because I don't want it to turn into a banana because putting that much heat into it could warp it pretty good, and I want to avoid that. This design aspect of welding it on the backside is fairly unique compared to other designs on the internet, but that wasn't what I was referring to earlier in the video. You're going to see that coming right up. Alright, now we'll flip it over and cut these straps off. That's what I was concerned with right there, making sure that we got full penetration. You can see all the welds, how they've gone all the way through the other side. One thing that I did off camera that you didn't see me do is I took my grinder and ran a couple passes down through the center of that where the welds had kind of come up a little proud through that die. That cleaned up everything nice and made it nice and smooth. Now we might as well cut our punch to length. And the punch is going to be the same length as the die, 18.5. The next thing we got to do is put this profile on our punch. So I think what I'm going to try to do is use a router with a carbide bit that's 45 and see if I can just slowly, it's got a bearing on it, and see if I can just slowly mill this down. This right here is the secret sauce, guys. This is what I am just totally blown away with. This worked incredible. That is literally just a wood cutting router with a wood cutting router bit. It's a 45-degree router bit. I'll show you everything right up close here very soon, but I could not be happy with this. A lot of guys I see using a grinder, and I could just picture having just this really wavy, uneven edge. This was absolutely perfect. That is working awesome, guys. Still got to go a little bit further until we're halfway there, and then we can flip it around and do the other side. But yeah, I am totally happy how this is working. Nice and straight. So there's half of it. Now we got to flip it over. Everyone watching this is wondering, how much does this cost? Well, towards the end of the video, I'm going to go over all of that. I've already given you a lot of my materials list, but I'm going to talk to you about how I source my materials, and I'm going to even give you a link to the spring that I ordered to make all this come together. And I am thrilled at how this came out. I'm glad of the finish, everything. Nice and straight. Right down through it. Perfect. Yeah, that worked good. That worked real good. And here's a close-up of that bit. It actually did an awesome job. It's still sharp, but the issue I had, the shaft broke. I was almost all done. I was probably 90% done with both sides. I was working on the second side, got about 10% left, and it broke. So I ended up putting in the same one, just a little bit smaller. And that's the bit right there in the center, 1/2 inch by 5/8 chamfer bit. Now if you look here, this punch has a little relief. That is to give this shaft and this spring some clearance beside this die. So we're going to do that to our piece that we fabricated. It looks to be in about 1/8 of an inch and 7/8 deep. To make sure that it's accurate, we'll use our square. Just transfer that over onto our new one. We'll take a black magic marker so we can see it a little bit better. And that'll also get rid of this little chip right here from where I accidentally walked that router blade off the edge of this and it dug into that. So that'll correct that as well. Now we'll cut the notch out using my portable bandsaw stand, and if you want to see how I built this, I'll have a link for that as well. Now we'll cut some of this tube to go onto here, and you can see that the length of it is from that notch to the end. So we'll just use this as our guide. So that's 3 1/8. After I cut those little notches on the top punch, I had to go back in and trim the bottom die, because the bottom die needs to be the width of that punch. So the width of those notches. Now I've gone ahead and cleaned down everything, took off all the mill scale, cleaned up the pipes we just cut, and you can see how these will go on there. They'll fit just like that. And so that those are centered, I've got this plate shimmed up with some 3/16, which will put these right perfectly centered on this plate here. Off camera, I went and built this piece right there and that piece right there. It's 2 3/4 by 2 3/4, ½ inch thick. The next thing we gotta do is we gotta locate these rods and get these rods welded in. The way I did that is I found center of this bottom plate, and then I set this on there, my bottom die. Then I centered the bottom die left to right evenly, and then I placed my punch down inside my die, so it's sitting just like that. And then these guides that are going to get welded to the side, I placed them to the side of my punch, and then I just traced around them. So that's how I arrived at those circles right there. Now we just need to know how big to make them. So then I'm just going to take a set of calipers, put them on the rod. That's how big our bit needs to be. And then it's just a matter of finding the right cutter for the size of the dowel. So that's too small, and that one is going to be just right. It's going to be a little too big, which is okay. Then we can plug weld it from the backside. This size is 15/16, and the rod that we're using is 7/8 in diameter, so it's a 1/16 of an inch bigger. Now with our annular bit up into our mag drill, it's time to drill it. I just held it over this circle and just centered it up. And if you don't have a mag drill, you can rent one. Since my punch is the same height as this one, it's just a lot thicker, I'm going to make the guide rods the same length. We'll make those 7 inches. So I'll just make a stop against the fence, and there we are, 7 inches from the blade.
Doing little things like this not only save you time from having to keep measuring each piece, but it also increases your accuracy because you're not measuring every time and then making a mark.
Now with our pins made, we can get a couple tacks on the back side, then we can get the pin squared up on the front side. Kind of stick it in there and use my square as a stop and get a quick tack on it.
I see a lot of people when they do stuff like this, they use magnets a lot, and I personally don't like using magnets simply because it just seems to mess with the arc, it messes with the weld puddle, so if I can avoid it, I do. You can see what I'm doing here is I'm just basically putting a tack on it and then just giving a little tap here and there. Wherever you put your tack, that's where the metal's going to pull. That's an easy way to remember it. So if you're trying to align something and things aren't working out for you and it needs to go one way, if it's got to pull towards you, make sure the tack is closest to you because that's the direction that the metal is going to pull. I'm just taking my time, put on a tack, check it, put on a tack 180 degrees away, check it, put on another tack, keep checking it, and then finally weld it out.
All right, we're making pretty good progress. These are nice and square. Everything looks great. Now we can fit our bottom die. That's still pretty hot. Fit our die in there, just set it in there loosely. Set our punch down in there and set our sleeves down in there. We see how these fit, and they can be right tight to this punch and still go on these guide rods. So we're good here. So what we're going to do is slide that out of the way. We're going to put down, we're going to make sure our work surface is somewhat clean. And we're going to put down a couple spacers. And we're going to put down our punch. These on it, just like that. And that'll center that on that punch. We'll get a couple quick tacks on it and make sure everything fits real well. There, and that'll align our punch on the bottom perfectly. See, watch, if our alignment's off, see, watch, I'll misalign the bottom die. Watch how when I set this down, See how it pulls that die right into place? It like positions it right where it wants to be. So good. So I can pull this back off now and we'll fully weld these out.
If there was any gap between those sleeves and that punch when I had it set in that bottom die, I just would have welded everything together as it was. But when everything was all put together, those sleeves were tight to the die and they fit nice around those vertical columns. So I was able to lay it down on the table, get everything all tacked together, and weld it up. Either way would have been fine, but it's just a little bit easier when you're welding in position like I am here.
All right, time to put the bottom die in and get that welded. We'll get a couple tacks on it just so we can try it, make sure it's going to work without any problems.
I really think that building this in the order that I have helps to eliminate any possible alignment problems by putting on the guide rods first and then fitting the punch to the guide rods and then fitting the die to the punch. You've eliminated any type of misalignment issue.
Now we're going to weld on this platform onto the back of our die or into the back of our punch, because that's where the press is going to press against. Put this in upside down to keep some weight down on it, and we'll put a couple more tacks on it and we'll get it welded out. We're definitely into spray transfer. I've got this thing turned right up. It's pretty thick stuff here. And here is the finished product, and I can't wait to try it. Now the springs won't be in for a couple more weeks, but I'll show you the link to the springs that I ended up getting. So for now, we'll just have to manually lift it up. And I didn't bother to put this on the top. I don't even know as if that's necessary, but if it is, I've already got the piece built and we can just put it on at any time. Just set that on there for now and lower this down. I put a little bit of grease on these little slides right here just to make getting it, you know, up and down easier because it had them on the original one. So I don't know if it's necessary, but it probably just prevents wear and tear, so I wanted to add it to these. So I think we're gonna go right straight to bending a piece of this. All right, let's put this in. The only real concern that I had as I built this was, you know, are these dies on the original one hardened? You know, are these gonna like mash out after a while and wear out? We'll find out. All right, so we got it in there. Take our spacer out of there, and then square it up off the press. Looks good right there. The moment of truth. This is about 14 inches that's in the press right now. We can go up to 18. Oh yeah, seems to be doing good. So that's bottomed out. Hopefully that gives us 90 degrees. We'll see. Put this back in, our little spacer. Once we get these springs, it'll make it so much easier. Wow, check that out, guys. That bent it better than the factory one bent it. Look how crisp that 90 is. And there it is, side by side. The one I bent with the factory press right here, and the one we just bent. The one we built might be a little bit tighter radius. Not by much, but it's pretty tight. Check that out. That's the seam right there where one butts up to the other. Yes. I'd say that's a success, guys. So this one that we just bent just now is already larger than the 12-inch one that we could bend with the other machine. So this would be cut off vertical right there, and we're already like 2.5 inches bigger. So this piece right here that we just bent will actually work for the trailer. So we're already ahead here. If I take my digital angle finder and set that on there, we'll see how close it is. We know it's a 90, but I'm just trying this out. So then we'll zero it, and now we'll just pump the handle until it's at it should say 45. to make up the 90.
Whatever you need for a bend, it's going to be half of that on this reading. So if you needed a 45-degree bend, that would read 22.5 degrees.
So I stand corrected. It does overbend it a little bit, and then it springs back. But by the way we set this up, just by a little bit of luck and coincidence and a little bit of forethought, that it actually works out to be 90 once this is bottomed out. I couldn't be happier how this turned out and with the results that it produced. You know, for those rare occasions that you do need to make something a little past 90, you can. I'm guessing probably about 92 degrees is what this is good for. Maybe we'll throw a little bracket in there and try that as well. Here's a piece of 1-inch flat bar. And that's that. Nice crisp bend, and the good thing I guess is that it can over bend it if it needs to be, especially with smaller stuff. And I wouldn't say that's a design flaw because that one over bends as well by about just the same amount. Yeah, just put in a vise, bent it back a little bit with a screwdriver. That gives a nice crisp bend. I couldn't be happier. This was definitely a success. Let me remove this and flip it upside down so you guys can see the edge underneath. Doesn't have any damage on it. Oh, I'm happy about that. That was really my only concern. Yep, looks great. See all along that. That right there is when I was grinding, I bumped into it, but we're looking at this edge here. That stuff you see on it, like I said, is grease, but yeah, no damage. Awesome. The only damage is the scratched up paint from the diamond tread. Yeah, this is a definite, I got grease on myself now. Definite success. And this is the spring that I ordered. I'm gonna have to cut it down. It's 305 millimeters long, compression steel. Did a lot of research before I ordered this, so it has the right compression. Wire diameter 2.5 millimeter, outside diameter 30 millimeter. Length 305. Not only are you going to save hundreds of dollars from going out and buying something that's like 18 inches wide that you can bend with, you're also going to have the satisfaction of knowing that you've built it yourself. And along with that comes honing all your skills of welding and metal fabrication. It's a win-win for everyone. So all in all, not including my time, cost me $57 to build that press. I got $57 in materials including that spring. I literally just paid $160 for that 12-inch press not more than 2 or 3 days ago, and I made one bend with it. I'll end up putting that on Marketplace, sell it for a little bit of a discount. I'll end up recovering some of my costs for the materials and someone will get a good deal. Everybody wins. I'm just super happy with the results, guys, and you guys regular to the channel know that I love building tools. I love doing ultimate tool build series. I've seen a lot of people building these presses and a lot of them just grind the edge, and I could just see me just having this terrible wavy edge. I wanted a way to do it that I felt was going to be kind of precise, and I am totally happy with using this router and a carbide router bit. It was nothing fancy about the steel that I used. I got it all from my local metal yard. All drops. In total, minus labor, I have $57, and that includes the spring. If you guys like this type of content and tool builds, I'll have a link to a playlist up above. It's my Ultimate Tools playlist. It covers a lot of the things that you see me using in my episodes. I want to thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for tuning in. New videos every Friday, so until next week, I will see you then. Take care, stay safe, and God bless.